Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. And this episode is brought to you by PCBWay, but more on them later because today I've got a special guest, Senya. How are you, Senya?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. This episode, I don't actually know you very well, and I have had some guests like that, but for myself and for the ones listening, can you introduce yourself and let us know who you are and what you do?
Sure. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So, I'm Senya. I'm a software engineer by day, and then I'm a knitter, sewist, and otherwise also or recently uh full stack maker by night. And what I mean by full stack maker is that I this year I have branched out to uh, woodworking or wood and metalwork, and also dabbled in like leather work. So yeah, I think that by night I'm mostly a full stack maker.
I love the use of nerdy terminology, bringing in coding, right? Which full stack is a coding term, if I'm not mistaken, to
Yes,
the
it is.
world of making. So I really love that aspect of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. That is a totally like a term that I stole from my day job, which is like being a software engineer. And I'm actually somewhat annoyed by the term full stack in my professional life, because so I'm a web developer. I work with JavaScript, and to people who like know web development, I would say that I'm a front end engineer. Front end meaning the web or the browser or the client. Um, and then we have this concept of being full stack, which means that you do both like the front end and then back end development. But I've always found that to me the full stack, it's like um maybe you know the languages and maybe you can work with both, but you're not you're more like um a jade of all trades, queen of none kind of thinking.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I want to be in my professional life, I'm happy being just a front end engineer. And when people ask me, like, do I want to grow to become a full stack? I'm like, no. But then in my like free time hobby world, I'm like, I want to be a full stack maker because making is fun, and I feel like some of the handicraft stuff that I have done, I wouldn't say it's boring. For example, knitting is like it's my bread and it's my butter. I've actually known how to knit before I could read and write. So there's several decades of experience in my like knitting CV. Um, so I've seen a lot in that domain, and that's why I like branching out and trying different things. Yeah.
Neat. So let's actually start from the beginning. So where did your education start for you to be able to get into software dev?
This is a good question, but also a difficult one because
Okay.
like if I'm being totally honest, um, like it started with my like interest in math and problems. Like I remember starting school and not being particularly good at you know like any subject except for math. So I was like a in Finland, we get grades from 4 to 10, 4 being the poorest and 10 being the best. So I was like an 8 student on any other subject except for math and handicrafts. Um, and I think that that's the sort of like the foundation that I then started building on. And the sort of like the next building block was that I went to a special class in first junior high, and then afterwards I went to a special class in high school. And like the if there's sort of the junior high math and English um, specialized class is something that people can sort of like, okay, so you had a bit more lessons in these topics, and they can sort of shrug it off in that in the sense that if they haven't themselves gone to the same class, then they feel like, okay, I could, or like they can grow being a software engineer as well. Then then like my high school background is something that they're like, ooh, I cannot know, can I, like they went just to a normal high school, what does that mean, can they still like choose computer science in university? So I tend to hide the fact like which high school it is that I went to. um and now I can share, since I started talking about this, is that it was a math, physics, and programming specialized high school. And all of the math courses that are sort of available in um, high school, we had to do them. Same goes for the physics. And um, during that time, very few high schools in Finland were offering programming related classes or courses, but mine did. And also, all of them were compulsory to us who went to this class. So this is the part that people are like discouraged of, oh, maybe I cannot follow in your footsteps, and that's why I usually don't share it. But um, anybody can be a software engineer if they want to. I have you know, loads of colleagues who are self-taught, um, and also like people, like every day there's somebody who finds like, oh, I like solving problems, and then somebody else suggests like maybe become a software engineer. Um, and I've seen like a couple of nurses, marketing specialists. It would be really cool to also have somebody who's a doctor who decided like, no, I'm gonna do software, but I haven't met that person yet. But like, I know people who haven't even gone to university level education that contains programming, but they have gone to boot camps. So anybody can become a software engineer. But my path, yeah, was like interest in math, and then following that interest from junior high up until in university, I decided that I'm gonna pick. I didn't go to. I don't have a computer science degree, but I have a degree that has like one third is computer science, second third is um, like general business classes, and then the third is human computer interaction and other sort of like softer sciences that are somehow, you know, touching the engineering and human aspects. So yeah, that is the very long story of how I became a software engineer.
It's not that long. It's actually quite nice and encouraging. I have heard from a couple of people who do hiring in the software field that the most important thing they look at is not actually your resume and your school credentials, but they were saying that they hire typically based on a portfolio or like GitHub repos, so that they could actually peruse the work that this person has actually done rather than look at what the qualifications are on paper. Do you agree with that kind of sentiment, that someone that wants to get a job in software should probably just write code and share that code with the world so that their work is visible? Is that a valid way to do it?
It is. Um, but there's a but in my answer. Um, so I agree. Like if I was recruiting somebody to become a team member, I would definitely want to see their code, either something that they have done just on their own on their free time, or if it's something that is public, that they have done at their previous job, then I want to see their code, of course. But then, mm, how do I put this? Like, depending on what level of position it is. Like, but this is like when we go to the maybe like senior or lead level positions, like then it helps if you do have that kind of um, more theoretical knowledge that you um, maybe get only from university, or I don't know. I haven't been to University of Applied Sciences, so I don't know what they sort of teach in their class. But yeah, if you're applying for an entry level job, absolutely just hack at it. Like choose a technology that you're interested in, whether it's web development or embedded software development, and like make something and document it and show it, because that is a lot. This is software engineering is just like many pieces in a like put together in a big puzzle, and the fact that you could put at least like two puzzle pieces together is an achievement. So go ahead.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So there is a place for schooling, but there is a place for making code and showing it off type thing, if
Yeah,
I'm understanding that correctly.
absolutely. Yeah.
And what about your hobbies then? So you said knitting is your number one.
Yes,
What is it that you enjoy about knitting, and maybe could you share a couple of your knitting projects with us?
absolutely. I don't think that anybody has ever asked me like what is the thing that I like about knitting. Um, but like if I go back to, like preschool uh preschool Senya, and how I got interested in knitting was the fact that my grandmother was knitting all the time. Um, and I was interested in like what is that you're making, and how could I get into this as well? Because I thought it's magical. Like she has a ball or a skein of yarn, and somehow then that is made into socks or sweaters that then I get to wear, and they keep me warm. So I asked her like, could you teach me? And she said yes. And I learned. So it started there. And I think that, if this has been any other technique, like if my granny had been like somebody who crochets or weaves or, does some other handicraft technique that uses yarn, I would have been interested in that. But now it was knitting, and that's why I became a knitter. But as an adult, now I like the fact that I can make my own clothing. And this applies to sewing as well. So I make a lot of my own clothes. I wouldn't say majority, because I since I started so early, I also have a like high skill set. Um, um, I say a little bit embarrassed because like we Finns are not we're not good at marketing. We're always like downgrading, sort of like saying like no, it's nothing, although it might be the most wonderful thing in the world. So my making tends to be in like knitting and sewing um, territory, tends to be that kind of I dream about some fancy sweater or some fancy dress that is gonna take me maybe at least half a year to finish. So it means that I have um, more quality, less quantity um, in those items that I have in my wardrobe. But yeah, I think that making my own clothes is a very big part, like why I love this stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, to make something from nothing is a talent, right?
Oh yeah,
There's no way around it. I mean, you started with a ball of yarn or like a yard of fabric, and then it becomes clothing. That's no small feat, especially for like someone who's working at home, right? The clothes that we wear on everyday basis is made, by large machines in large factories. To make
Yeah,
something bespoke and by hand is, I mean, is no little feat. So you should be proud of yourself.
I am, and I'm also like proud of the clothes that I make because they are nice, and I get a lot of comments like, "Wow, I would have never guessed that you made this." That because it looks so shop bought or I don't know, factory made. Maybe shop bought is a like it's more of a compliment than factory made because yeah, like you said, majority of clothes are made in like faraway countries in sweatshops that we would never want to work in. So yeah, and and the fact that I know like I am the one who made this dress or these socks or these pants, uh, um, it makes me love and use these clothes over and over. And I want to mend them. I don't want to throw them away because I remember how like difficult it was to get this zipper straight or so that it doesn't sort of like pucker or something. So yeah, it's also like a very environmental uh, thing to do to make your own clothes and love them until you grow out of them. So yeah,
Absolutely, especially fixing things. I think that's one of the big deals right now with how we live is that when something gets worn out, it goes in the trash. And that's, to me, that's completely the wrong approach. And so the fact that you're wearing stuff that you care enough about to actually fix over time means a lot more to the environment than just going to the store, buying
yeah,
clothes, and when it wears out, in the trash it goes. It's not correct.
yeah, yeah. I agree 100%.
But I feel you told me in the pre-show that you started your love for electronics later in life, and just looking through your Instagram, it feels like knitting and sewing sort of was related to your starting electronics. Is am I right with that?
Yes, you are. It's actually so wonderful that you spotted that out because yeah, I when I consume electronics related material, I'm always like, yet another IoT device that is like put into a 3D printed plastic container. This is boring. I like, where is the yarn of the fabric? But yeah, so I got into electronics around like 4 years ago, and or like I've always known that electronics like exists, but like the spark that made me want to learn these things like how to build a circuit and how to solder and how to make something that I can either use or wear um, started in I think it was 2018. Um, there is actually an electronics kit related to this. So I had been gifted a learn how to solder kit that if I had finished that kit, it would have become some tool. This I think that this tells a lot about my sort of um, interest level because I don't remember. I think it was a oscillator or something, something that I would never find use for. And that's why I didn't ever start. I knew that soldering is like a good skill to have. Um, but I felt like I'm not gonna use it. Why would I learn something that I'm not gonna use? Maybe like once in a year I thought like should I make this kit? It would sort of show to the person who gifted me the kit that I'm thankful because I hadn't thrown it out. It was just sitting on there on the shelf or in a box. Um, but I didn't until fast forward to about 4 years ago. I saw this umbrella um, on the internet, and the umbrella was one of those see-through umbrellas that has the sort of fabric as plastic that is totally see-through.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there like I think there's one or two brands that are like they're known for this style, but I don't know those names.
Oh, me and
Um,
fashion are zeros. So
Okay.
You won't get an answer from me.
Yeah, let's hope the listeners are also like, I don't know what they're talking about. But anyway, the point was with this umbrella that the skeleton part, they had LED strips put like between the skeleton and then the see-through plastic. And I was like, oh my God, this is so Blade Runner, and you know, beautiful. And they had, of course, since I now know that they were like RGB um, LEDs, that they could be any color, but they were a beautiful like set of rainbow with multiple shades of like green and pink and purple or violet. And I was just so like, I need to have this. Like the photos are not enough. Um, that that I took out the soldering kit and I was like, I'm gonna learn this now, right now. I'm gonna learn this, and I need to order the components. And you like should have seen my face when I realized that I wasn't able to order the components so that I could put this umbrella together before like winter hits. So I think this was maybe like in October um, that I found out this photo of this umbrella. Um, and I was just like, okay, well, but then for the spring rains and and springtime, then I'm gonna make this umbrella, and I did. Um, and yeah, and then I actually asked the person who had gifted me the kit that did you know that there are stuff like this that you could put electronics into an umbrella or clothing, because also through this tutorial that like instructed like here's how you make this umbrella, I found out that there are like boards and LEDs and other components that can be embedded into clothing, and there's even like conductive thread. So I asked the person who had gifted me this kit, like, did you know that this exists? And they said like, well, yeah, kind of did, but I sort of didn't connect the dots. I mean, I know that you are a knitter and you sew things, but I I didn't think about it. This is what was available, and I thought that I'm gonna buy this and give this to her. So and this like punchline of I just didn't connect the dots, or didn't think to tell you that the specific niche of electronics would have been so much more interesting to me, is like something that I will remember always, and be like, when I tell something that I'm making or doing, even though I think that these are the important or interesting parts, I'm aware that it might not be to some individual, or some individuals, something really um, weird or niche or unheard of might be the like the huge set of fireworks that then gets them interested in this thing. So yeah, anybody who is listening who has their own niche, or um, something like that that you are you are very interested in, might not be so popular among other people, put it out there and shout about it at the rooftops, because we need to know. I would have wanted to know about these soft electronics and wearables. So yeah.
And that's an emergent thing right now. It's not huge, but it is growing, which is great. The soft electronics thing. Adafruit
Yeah.
has a lot of products. Is that the kind of stuff you were using? Some
Yes.
Adafruit sewables?
Yes. So the tutorial was an Adafruit tutorial, and I used their Flora board for that. And I think, yeah, like Adafruit boards are my favorite boards if we sort of like talk about wearable electronics. Um, but there are others as well. And I think like, yeah, diversity is always a good thing, um, because somebody, like you said, this is a growing area, and I think it's very sort of like unexplored area still. So if somebody like has a new type of conductive thread or new type of board or some new sensors, um, it's yeah, it's
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's time to use them and show them off. But I have to say though, one of the things I just noticed on your Instagram, which led me to that question, really sells your you really sold your sewing skills and your electronic skills short, because I was looking at it looked like a shirt you made with
yeah.
sewn flowers, and the flowers were lit up in an absolute perfect pairing of sort of fashion and electronics. Can you talk to us a little bit about that project?
Yes, I can. Uh, Thank you for calling me out on the selling short part because this is exactly what we Finns do. Like, we are lousy at marketing. But yeah, I think that was the second or third time when I used conductive thread. Um, and uh, okay, let me describe the blouse or the shirt as if there are listeners who don't have an Instagram who don't want to go and look up that photo that you're talking. But it's it's a like if we take out the lace and the electronics, it would be a very normal, plain looking um, normal t-shirt with like very long sleeves and uh, very um, oh my god, tight neckline, not a turtleneck, but just like a maybe a crew neckline. But then what I have done is that I happen to find some lace that has 3D flowers, not 3D printed, but like by 3D I mean it sort of pops out. It's you can squash the flowers if you like if there's something that is pushing against them.
Yeah,
Um,
they're like layers. It looks like flat layers of
yes,
cloth cut in like sort of like a petal pattern, but then sewn
absolutely.
together in such a way that the petals are like interleaved, a little bit like a rose. Am I reading that correctly?
Absolutely. Thank you for that description. It is what it is. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. And what I've done is that I embedded the yellow um, LED into that center of the rose, and then I embroidered some very teeny tiny glass beads around that LED so that the LED is very much hidden. So if my power runs out, which it does because it can only last for a couple of hours, like if there is no power and the LED is out, you wouldn't know that there is electronics embedded into this blouse. So yeah, and people have been saying to me like things like, "Oh my God, this could have come from a runway of a like um, some input some high end fashion brand here." Um, I don't follow fashion. Like I'm not a. I know some of the names, but I don't follow them. But somebody said that this could come from like I don't know Gucci or
Disagree.
Alexander McQueen or
No,
something like this.
not even
Um,
close. I think this is more of like a boutique one-off like high fashion thing. It's not. I wouldn't say it's one of those fashion houses. It's really it would be someone who put like a lot of love into one product. Like nearly more like a museum piece than a high end fashion piece. This thing
okay,
looks awesome.
okay, thank you. How about Lord of the Rings, but with electronics?
Yeah, I mean, I would go for that. You know what? Actually, that's more apt. I think this would be more comfortable as a prop on a movie set than something high fashion. This would be something like in some sort of otherworldly movie. It looks so good. It's crazy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, what you picked up from these photos is correct. Like, I my gateway into electronics was the soft circuits. So yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about how these LEDs are wired up. Where's the battery? What kind of battery are you using for this?
Ah, the battery is always the one of the pain points of making a wearable. These are just powered with cell coin batteries, and um, they are actually living in or like hidden in the neckline area. Um, and there are actually like two circuits in the blouse. Um, I don't remember what was my reasoning behind having two circuits. Maybe because I had calculated that that cell coin battery could not host like or support more than is it five or six or seven LEDs that I have. So it's like one circuit covers the like one half of my body. So it's like if somebody cut me in the middle, they would the circuits would be intact. So it's like and the circuits go the flowers and the flowers with the LEDs go like they go down from the like neckline area to down like down the sleeve. So yeah,
Yeah,
something.
probably it was probably smart to do that because you get double runtime if
Yeah,
you're running two batteries and two circuits. So and those coin cells are notoriously terrible for their power capacity. They're not good for much.
they are. They are. But there is a downside to having two circuits. So since I wanted to, mm, I wanted to have some kind of animation or some kind of, like interest in addition to having LEDs, but like I wanted to have something in there. But I wasn't comfortable with programming anything myself yet at this point. So remember, this is my second or third time using conductive thread. I was like, maybe go for the MVP, which is like the minimal viable product, rather than go big or go home. So I bought a board from I think this is from the Spark Fun, like their like wearable board family, and the board is like Tiny Lily or Lily Tiny. I never remember like which way that pair of words is, but that point of that board is that it's pre-programmed. So um, depending on which pin you decide to use, you get different um, different patterns for the lights to go out. So there's a totally random one, which is it seems really random. Then there is a heartbeat type of like flashing, and then there is just slowly lighting up and then dimming away. And hang on, there's a fourth one I think, but I cannot remember what it is. But I used for both of these circuits, I used the slowly lighting up and then dimming away. And since both of these circuits have like the on and off switch in the battery holder. Um, the first circuit is always the easiest to put on, but then if I want to have them in sync, which is something that I would like to have, that is very difficult, and I usually like mess it up by a couple of, well, not even a couple, maybe tens of milliseconds, and it's not totally in sync. So yeah, but like we talked in the pre-show, we ourselves are always the most harsh
Oh,
judges on our own
absolutely.
project. So this is
Because
me just being, yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's fair enough. I do it to myself too, but you have to understand too that as me looking from the outside, if you asked me to like price this out, right? Like if I wanted you, if I expected you to make one of these for me, I would expect to pay in the thousands of dollars. So just to give you an idea what it looks like to me, what I would ascribe a value to it. um, I would expect someone to charge me thousands of dollars if I needed this made for me. So
Okay.
that should show you the level of quality you're projecting versus the level of quality you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it really does because now I'm just like, oh, I made this. This is my third project with
Yeah, and look at it. I
the
mean,
brand.
you're going in the right direction. Just a quick interruption to talk about this episode's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay has been a long-term sponsor of the channel, and I think they're a good match for my channel because they provide quality PCBs for a reasonable price. You can get boards manufactured up to 100 mils by 100 mils for just $5, including shipping to Canada, 15 US dollars, including shipping to USA, 12 US dollars, which is incredibly cheap for professionally manufactured PCBs. I can personally attest to the quality of these PCBs, and so if you want a circuit immortalized forever, check out PCBWay.com with the link in the description. Now back to the conversation. It looks like you also did manage to make your umbrella. Is that, or is that someone else's umbrella?
No, that is my umbrella. Like, yeah. And I actually haven't given it as much love and wear as I should, but that's only because I'm always so afraid, like, something is going to break this umbrella when I'm using it. But I should really give it more airtime. Um, so I don't know. Have you been to Finland ever?
I have not. I want to travel, but I've never been in a financial situation that allowed me to travel.
Okay.
Uh, just for the listeners out there, return flight uh, to and from Europe is like $1,300, something like that.
Yep.
So that's no lodging, no food, no nothing. So, and
Yep.
plus, then you need to take. I mean, if I'm in Europe, I'm already there. I would
Yep.
also want to take a couple weeks and visit more than one place. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the problem of being North American, wanting to visit Europe.
Yep. Yeah. Same goes here. Like if we want to come to North America, that's the ballpark of the tickets. Only the tickets.
Yeah.
Never mind the accommodation and food. But anybody who has visited Finland probably knows, or like if you want to come here, please do it in the summertime because we are um it gets very very dark during the winter. So for example, today I think the sunset was around 3 p.m. or something. Um, and this starts I mean it's sort of like depends on the month, but October and November are rainy, windy, and like not as cold as the winter, but like it rains a lot. So this umbrella, whenever I do decide to take it with me, when it's not too windy, when the wind might break it, for example, I mean I get um, I don't get comments because Finnish people are also very shy and polite in the sense that what like we let other people like be and we mind our own business. But since I used to live in the sort of like hippie neighborhood part of Helsinki, what I did get a lot was like heads turning and even a couple of cars honking. Um, of course, I cannot be sure like was that aimed at my umbrella, but I think because like there was no cyclist or somebody else in the road um, doing stupid things, so I'm assuming. But yeah, so it is my umbrella, and I love it.
That's awesome. And just a small correction. I just checked for round trip tickets to Helsinki.
Yeah,
Uh, is almost 3,000 Canadian dollars for the round trip. And
yeah.
then if I want to go with my wife, that's going to be $6,000.
Ooh.
It's so much money.
Yeah, just to be specific, was that in economy or?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the lowest price possible.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Absolutely
Um,
ridiculous.
it is, but like I think it's a good price tag because we don't want to create more carbon emissions than necessary. And yeah, if it was super cheap, we would all be flying around all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a little rough. You know, I do think the British had a good idea doing the tunnel to the mainland, and so then you could theoretically travel emissions free if you had an electric vehicle, for example.
Mm.
But yeah, the day they figure that out for the transatlantic, that's going to
Ooh.
be a good day.
Ooh. I wouldn't go to a tunnel that is that long.
It'd be like a
Definitely
week
not.
of driving underwater.
Oh my God. No, absolutely. Like at least have a way out in Greenland or somewhere, but like whew.
Rough, huh?
Yeah, even with the Greenland um out out point. Like no. Ooh, no no. Um but okay. Um what shall we talk about next?
Well, I do know that you wanted to talk about some Finnish electronics that we might know in our everyday lives.
Yes, let's talk about that. Because this week I'm actually, or well, today, yesterday and today I'm feeling very festive and um, patriotic. I don't use that word often, but so yesterday was the Independence Day of Finland. So we all had a public holiday and stayed at home and watched the like presidential oh my God, my brain just blanked out. Reception, yes, presidential reception at the presidential castle. So therefore, I thought like I did a bit of a temperature check in the pre-show talk that we had with Dan. Like, um, did did you know that these brands are from Finland? Um, and he didn't. So if there's somebody in the in the listeners who like knew that both of these or even one of these brands is from Finland, like yay, um, wonderful. But so has anybody heard of a ring called Oda? And this is now the Finnish way that I'm pronouncing it. But then
Yeah,
could you give
yeah,
the
or a ring.
yeah?
And I've never
So
heard it. I've never seen it spelled. I've only seen it like I've only heard it said basically by Linus Tech Tips, which is my number one source for like technology stuff.
yeah. Yeah. Would you have guessed that this is from Finland?
No, never.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to place it somewhere, like where would you have put it?
Like basically where all the IoT startups are, which would be either California or maybe like at max like Seattle, Washington, something like that.
Ah, okay. I did not know that there's another sort of like um hub or nexus in Seattle. But okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for saying that it's um like California or Silicon Valley quality because I'm very proud of this product and I am an Aura user myself. So like every day I sort of like marvel at this teeny tiny wonderful ring and like I do not know who is on their hardware team, but whoever they are just they are geniuses. Um and I don't know do you follow Becky Stern?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. Did you see or watch her video about the ring teardown?
Oh no, I haven't. Did she tear down the Aura ring?
Yeah, she
Ooh.
did. Two versions of them. So she did first the second generation, which is the older, um, like the older version, and then she did the same for the newer, the generation three. So it was really interesting because even though like we can see some of the electronics, like if we take off the ring and sort of look at the inside, but for example, we cannot see where the battery is. And to me, you know, as somebody who wants to make wearables and has to like think about the how long is this battery gonna last, in her like video when she um like could see, I don't remember, is it from the actual teardown or from the she did some kind of imaging for both of those rings. Um, like partnered up with some sponsor that does this kind of imaging service. But like she found out that it's a 16 milliampere hour battery.
Oh,
Um,
tiny.
it is very, very, very tiny. And for this battery to last, well, okay, mine lasts about like, and depending on how much I use it per day. But I think if I'm to wear this all the time, then it lasts like 3 days. If I don't wear it during the day all the time, then it's like four. But I heard from my friends who were like Generation 2 users that they could last like a week, and that is that is a long time. So it's also shout out to whomever is in their software team. Like they are also geniuses because that's some heavily battery optimized software engineering that they have there. So yeah,
Yeah, so it seems like she partnered up with Lumifield was the company that had helped her do the imaging,
yeah,
and it's a pretty interesting video. In fact, I think people who are listening should go take a look. It's really interesting to see that the battery is tiny. It's like
yeah,
bent into a banana shape because obviously the ring is very small. So
yeah,
it's very impressive.
yeah,
But then again, you need a team of sort of mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, software engineers to make something like that come true.
yeah.
Very cool.
I
And
agree.
what was the other Finnish company you were talking about?
Yes. So again, sorry about the pronunciation. I tend to pronounce these as a Finn like. So this is called Ruby. And I think that their sort of like most popular product is the Ruby tag. So it's an IoT sensor that has or like a device that has multiple sensors, and then you can pretty easily like get data um, inside or outside your home or wherever you want to put this tag in. Um, we have a couple of these tags at home, but since I'm not the one configuring our automated home, um, um, well, to me it sounds. I mean, it is easy to use, but I've also heard like a couple of friends saying that their parents who are not technical people, like could start, an automated home with these. So I thought that I also want to give them a shout out, um, because it might be something that you know people know about or use and do not know that it's Finnish, or even if it's just a totally random new product to them. I want it to be, a bit patriotic, and spread the wonders of Finnish engineering.
I think Canadians only have one tech company that we could point, but I don't know if they're still in business. Do you know of a Canadian tech company?
No,
So, as far as I know, the company BlackBerry, who used to make phones with keyboards,
yeah.
I believe they are Canadian, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
okay, okay. Because I knew that BlackBerry is very North American because I have never used or like seen even a BlackBerry phone. Um, but I mean I do know the brand that it exists and it's popular in North America. So
Yeah,
yeah, but this
it
is
was.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
this is interesting because I do know some other bits and pieces about Canadian culture and history, but like I had not thought of the um, tech scene or this kind of like yeah. If you had asked me, could I list some Canadian companies, whether they make embedded stuff or something else, I would not like the list would have been empty.
Yeah, and I mean, me too, right? I'm not particularly patriotic. I'm usually a large critic of my own country because I feel like we could always do better. But yeah, BlackBerry just happened to know that it was a Canadian company. But
Okay.
yeah, I think it looks like they still exist. They still have a website, which is good. And it seems like now they're more focused on cybersecurity rather than
Ooh.
hardware.
Okay. Okay. Because also talking about companies that make phones or used to make phones, did you know that Nokia is also a Finnish company?
I did not. I actually gleaned that from our pre-chat because you were saying that the Aura Ring was created by engineers who used to work at Nokia, and so I kind of put two and two together. So if we didn't have our pre-chat, I would have just assumed it was Japanese because it kind of sounds the name sounds a little bit Japanese to me.
Ah, that is true. Like, some words are not. I wouldn't. So I don't know any words that are like exactly the same. Like sound exactly the same. Of course, mean totally different things. Um, in Finnish and Japanese, but there are, for example, in the way that we pronounce words or what kind of intonation we have, they are similar. So it's easy for a Finn to learn Japanese pronunciation, and it's easy for a Japanese person to learn Finnish pronunciation. But the alphabetical, you still have to learn the totally different alphabet. Situation is still there. Um, yeah. Okay.
That's really
Yeah. But
interesting. I never knew the link between sort of Finnish phonetics and Japanese phonetics. That's really cool.
yeah, I think so too, because culturally also there are some things that we do understand. So like, um, if Japanese are overly polite, um, we Finns are also quite polite, and both of our cultures sort of like we can endure um, silence to a point. I think that we Finns sort of like win the competition if there was like a staring competition where you have to be silent. But like, yeah, yeah. So there are a lot of, for example, like friendship schools between like Finnish schools and Japanese schools. Um, yeah.
I remember during the pandemic there was a meme about how Finnish people would have no problem social distancing, and then there was a picture of a Finnish bus stop, and there was like probably 10 people waiting for the bus, but they were each like 2 meters away from each other. And so the bus stop was in the middle, and there was a massive spread on the sidewalk because people were just keeping to themselves. I don't know if that's actually true or just a meme, but it seemed really
It's
funny at the time.
it's very funny because it is true. I mean, and yeah, that is something that happens, or happened pre-pandemic and still happens sort of like in the pandemic, or if some person wants to call this a post-pandemic or something. Yeah, yeah. So my friends and I have a joke that like a Finnish bus or train or whatever um, form of transport that has a lot of seats in it is sort of full when one person has taken one of the seats that are sort of like next to each other, like a
That's
pair of seats.
hilarious.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So, um, but yeah, that's who we are. I actually know my most of my Canadian uh, like pieces of history and culture through this one amazing author who is Louise Penny. I don't know. Have you heard of her?
I have not.
Okay, because this tends to be the case with most Canadians that I meet and tell about her books. So they are. She has only like one series, which is called the Gamache series, and Gamache is he's a police officer and he solves crimes, mostly murder, and I think Penny just published her, is it 19th or 18th book in the series, and it's still like going strong. There, it hasn't sort of like I'm not bored, and the characters and sort of like the bigger arch of or bigger storyline, which is like the life of these characters. spanning multiple decades is still it's still interesting, and I'm always looking forward to her next book. So I know sort of like snippets of culture, both from the French and from the English side of like Canadians. So yeah,
It's extremely different, huh? Like the French culture and the English culture in this country are completely different. And then there's
yeah,
also like maritime culture, which are the easternmost provinces. You got like kind of central Canadian culture. You've got prairie culture, which is heading towards the west, and then you have Pacific culture, and then you have northern culture. It's like Canadian culture is very diverse, like very vast. And
yeah,
yeah, don't look too much into her history because it's horrific. don't, if you
yeah.
don't want to
Okay.
have a bad day, don't look into her history.
Yeah, I think that was it a year ago or a couple of years ago? Um, yeah, there was some bits in the news, and that gave me a um, like a pre-taste of these things. But yeah, I think that everybody's history is if we dig deep enough, uh, it's gonna have these well, not flavors, well, very very dark ages also. So you're not the only country who has that kind of history. I think that we should talk actually more about these things because then
Absolutely.
people would know and then we wouldn't repeat it. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But you just mentioned Louise Penny, which is a Canadian author, which brings us quite neatly around to you have some book recommendations for makers who are listening to the podcast, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and this totally came up when you said like when you were talking about
Self doubt
um
and
yeah,
being
yeah,
hard
that
on
you want
yourself.
to. Yes, yes, that you want to talk to makers who are making awesome things, but then somehow we just end up sort of feeling like we don't have anything to say, or we're sort of our work is not important, or something like that. So I because like I basically know like only one listener, which is me, and then I would like to know more about this listener. So when you said that they are um, makers and they sort of want to hear other makers talk about these kinds of things, so I was like, oh, I have a couple of book recommendations specifically for that because I, as a maker, these are the two books that I'm gonna mention soon. Are books that I come back to on a yearly basis. So at least once a year. I sometimes would like to keep score, like how many times did I listen to these books, like for example this year or last year. But I at the same time I don't want to do it because like why am I counting? If I end up counting, does it mean that I had like three very difficult points in or like periods in my making of this year? But yeah, anyway, I'm rambling. Um, so the first of those books, which is targeted at makers, is a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and I want to say like as a small warning that like Elizabeth herself says somewhere like this book is also like very non-scientific and weird in a way, and that she has kind of written it to herself, so that when she has insecurities or fear of something, then she can just come back to this book and sort of talk herself into, making or publishing or just continuing making. So um, that's just a heads up if you are a very scientific person like myself. There's gonna be some stuff about the universe and this kind of thing that she says that she believes like 100%. But you can leave that to one side. It's just I feel like it's some explanation and you don't have to agree with her to be able to read the book. But in this book, she basically talks about making, and why we humans want to, why we need to, why we love to make things, but then also about the insecurities and fears and self doubts that come along with this territory. And she has a lot of personal, excuse me, personal stories that she shares about her life as a writer or other type of maker, and then stories from other people from whom she has like asked permission, like, hey, can I share this story in my book um, about making? And I think it's always so encouraging, the stories, but also the small strategies that she sort of like has between the stories. And whenever I listen to this book, I feel like, okay, okay, now I remember. Like, even if my gremlins or the little voices in my head are saying like, do not put that picture on Instagram, like somebody has already made a soft electronics project like this. Um, I can listen to that voice and I can listen to that fear, but like I'm not gonna let it drive this thing. Like I'm gonna put it out there, and if it's sort of um interesting to some people, then it will be. Somebody might not like it or might even say something nasty, although Instagram is not the place where the nasty lives these days. Sorry, Twitter. Um, yeah, I'm gonna put it out there, and that's mostly, due to that book, because it sort of also talks me into, just continuing making. So check out Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
I'm going to put the links to the books in the description. So if you guys just want to go
Wonderful.
click on the description, they might be affiliate links. So, if you want to
Yep.
make me 13 cents before the for the holidays, then let's do it.
Yay. And I also want to say, like, I am an audiobook person. I like listening to audiobooks and podcasts, so that's also my preference, but like absolutely like buy the digital or paperback book if that is the format that you prefer. Yeah. The other book that is not targeted so much at makers, but I think that the author like mentions making at some point of this book, is a book called Daring Greatly, and it is by Brené Brown, who is a researcher, an author, and a storyteller. And she talks and researches shame and vulnerability. And if these two words do not like immediately get you sort of glued to your seats and interested, I mean they are pretty much that kind of like words, like, "Ooh, I do not want to know more about these things." um, I have to say Brené writes and talks about these like in a very interesting way. Her She has two TED Talks that I think are in the sort of top 10 most watched TED Talks of all time or something like this. Um, and Daring Greatly is like a book where she like defines like what is shame and what is vulnerability, and why these are like very human emotions, and sort of like the situations where these emotions pop up, and making things is one of those situations, and definitely like publishing or putting your work out there is another one of these situations. So yeah, this is another book that I also listen to on a yearly basis, or whenever I feel like, oh no, I cannot do this. I should go live under a rock, um or in some country where nobody knows where to put this on a map. So yeah.
I mean, as a maker, imposter syndrome hits me all the time where I feel like I have no business making videos. I have no business making circuits. And it happens with the podcast all the time, too. I just feel like, I'm wasting my time. Nobody listens to this. and there are things that ground me. On last week's podcast, which at the time of recording this with you today is not out. It's out tomorrow for us, but for the listeners, it's been out for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
I talk about how I actually went searching for my podcast on the internet, and something I didn't mention is that there was a top 10 list for the top 10 electronics podcast, and my podcast wasn't on there, but there was only 8 in the list. This was a top 10 list with only 8 podcasts, and I wasn't even on it. But that's not the
No.
crux of it. What had hit me though is that there was someone had left a review for my
Yeah.
podcast, and it was very obviously not botted. It was someone who did listen to the podcast, and they said such kind words, and it just made me feel better about what I do. And so just, those of you who show up in the comments and say kind words to makers, just know that you're probably making that maker's day. And those of you who show up in the comments and say negative stuff, or I think worse for me, worse than negative stuff is sort of ignorant stuff.
Yeah.
You can just piss off
Oh
because,
yeah.
like, we are vulnerable when we put out stuff like that. And yeah, the kind words are, I mean, they have a big effect on me and my making process. So if you're one of those people, I have to thank you guys greatly for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree because like whenever whatever it is that I'm putting out to the world, if there is even just one person who says like genuine, you said the word like it wasn't like botted. It's not a botted comment. But it's a comment made by a human. It the feeling is just the best. So um the same like if you're a listener who reaches out to Dan in the comment box or via a DM, like you are awesome. And also, now I feel like this is the perfect part for me to also like say thank you for hosting this podcast because I think that you and this podcast should have been in the top 10, preferably the top 5 of the electronics podcast list because this is one of those podcasts that I started subscribing to, somewhere in I think 2019 or now I have to think on like when did you start this? Because I think that I started
Oh,
collecting and gathering uh, electronic podcast around that time when I had that spark of like, oh, I want to do this, but I felt also like there aren't that many, and it was really difficult to find them. Um, so when did you start the podcast?
let me see. 2020. So I think this is
Yeah,
American 9/4 2020. So 9 would be, what's the ninth month? September.
yeah.
So September 2020 is when I started.
Okay, so this one wasn't then one of the first ones because that's when I started. And the thing that drew me to this podcast and still draws me, and like I try to um I always look like look at who is a guest in the show, and based on that I like definitely listen or then save it for later. Um, but like was the fact that the name of the podcast is like Simple Electronics because that already like um, said to me like you don't have to be a, an electrical engineer or an embedded software engineer to listen to this podcast because some of the other podcasts around the same topic they are more complicated, more cool, or somehow like I don't know. Um, it
Very
gives me the
insidery.
vibe. Yeah, yeah, that's a good word. So it feels like the other podcasts I might subscribe, but then I don't end up listening to the episodes because it's like already like, oh, do I like will I understand what they're talking? about. And I love from the sort of like first episode onwards, you as a host, like if there is a word that that like your guest uses, you sort of like pause and ask them like what does this mean, or you yourself like explain it out loud. And I think that's a very very core component of like being inclusive, and also like spreading the joy of whatever the topic is, like if it's electronics related keyword or core concept, that's good to sort of like spell out. But even if it is related to software engineering or something else, knitting, like it's also good to spell out, because um, not everybody knows everything, and you never know, they might be interested if we just explain it to them, or show some weird examples of cool looking projects. So yeah. So thank you, Dan, for like making this podcast. I am so happy that this exists.
I really appreciate hearing that, and I think I when you reached out on Twitter,
Yeah.
um, because there wasn't enough women on the podcast, and that's because, I mean, first of all, I feel awkward reaching out to women, especially in DMs,
Mhm.
and women don't typically check their DMs, and I don't fricking
No.
blame them. Um, but I believe I even told you that hearing that people who make cool stuff listen to the podcast is like it's the best feeling in the world. And I think I even told Ayesha that, at least in the pre-chat, I told her that I
Yeah.
find it incredible that she's listening to the podcast while laying out circuits professionally. I feel so accomplished when I hear stuff like that, because you know, I can't believe, like, I would love to be in a position where my skill set was large enough and extensive enough to be able to, be part of like major projects, and be part of like the bettering of, humanity, to be a little bit more extreme. But the fact that this podcast is being played to people, like listened to by people who are making the massive projects, or helping humanity in the case of Aisha, it's heartwarming. So I'm very happy about that. I couldn't be more thrilled to be, in a maker's ear for
Yeah.
an hour every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen to this podcast when I walk, and sort of like if I'm in need of some kind of inspiration, or if I'm down, sort of like I had a way too difficult problem at work to solve, then I'm like, oh, what like which episode do I want to listen to again, or something like that. So yeah, I think you are making a difference, um, and also in the, well, not business, but in the effort of making the world a better place. I think that um, well, well, consistency is not the word that I'm looking for. I'm more like continuity is the word that I'm looking for. The fact that you um, show up like year after year. So you've been now hosting the podcast for 2 years in run. Um, please don't stop, uh, because like there are loads of interesting podcasts that maybe have like 1 or 2 seasons, and then for some reason it stops. And at that point, like we never know like what is happening um, uh, behind the curtain. Like, was it that was there an accident or something very dramatic, or was it just life, or maybe there's a life situation change, maybe a move to a new country or a new family member or something, I don't know. And at that point, well, like if there is no new episodes coming out, it's also very risky from the listener perspective to reach out to the host like, hey, like, are you coming back? I'm really hoping that you would. um, so yeah, please keep on making this. And if it's like more more makers that you need as a guest. Like I can also uh, point out some other people because like yeah. So in the episode where Ayesha was guest, you just referred to me as a friend of her, but that was me. So I was very happy that you talked about this on the podcast with Thea because when you mentioned it, I was like, of course, this makes total sense. Like, I cannot know. I don't look at my DMs because they are filled with,
Horrible.
oh yeah, I was going to say, like pictures that I did not ask for, or unsolicited like help and regarding something that I do on a professional level. So, um, and when you said it, I was like, okay, now I have to reach out. Like this is a sliding door moment. Like um, I I want to reach out and offer something if I have something to offer. So that's why I reached out, and I was so happy, by the way, to hear Ayesha talk, because I felt like, and this is not I'm not the only person who said this to her, um, but like we have a group of friends, and we are all like interested in electronics. We have very diverse backgrounds. Some of us do it professionally, like Aisha does, but others are just like hobbyists like me. So uh, many of us said like I actually got more information like out of Aisha uh, like from the podcast than from some of our talks. I mean, it's of course like different kind of information, but the kind of um, really cool and interesting kind of information. So it was also to me, it was a very nice experience listening to that episode. So yeah, please
And
please continue, keep it up. So everybody, comment to this episode or any future episodes, like what you loved about that episode, so that Dan can uh, have energy and like steam to keep this thing going.
and absolutely, if you're a maker, you need to reach out to me because the issue is I put out calls all the time, right? If people are interested in coming on the podcast, they should reach out. But the thing is, they don't, and the reason they don't is because they always feel like they're not good enough.
Oh yeah.
And I'm here to say, if you make cool stuff, and that's cool stuff judged by me, by the way, not yourself, because people doubt themselves too much. You're good enough. So come on the podcast and come hang out. And then that'll also give Senya more stuff to listen to, which means that she'll continue to make cool stuff too. So, you're needed.
Yes. And then I'm gonna tell my friends like, hey, Dan has a uh, this kind of person or this kind of guest on the episode. Like you could maybe get there was some interesting topics that they discussed, and maybe you want to listen to this. So there will be more listeners, and good will keep multiplying. But actually, what you said about asking people online, like would they like to come onto the show? I was actually thinking that also another good place to reach out would be if you go to like electronics related conferences or events. And well, we already mentioned that I live here in Europe and you live in North America. So what I've been like, uh, jealous about to you and to anybody else who lives in North America is the like a very diverse and long list of electronics related events that happens in North America. Um, because I would have to pay an arm and a leg to attend this kind of event that usually I don't know, it's maybe a weekend or a long weekend event, and on top of that I would have to suffer the um, oh my god, my brain just blacked out. Um, jet lag, jet
Oh, yeah,
lag.
jet lag. Big time. Because
Yes,
so from my time zone, you're 7 hours ahead, I think.
yes.
So, and I'm in the Eastern time zone. So if you wanted to go to California to a Maker Fair, for
Hmm.
example, you'd be 9 hours ahead. I think yeah. So that would be flipping your day by a quarter.
Yes,
That's crazy.
it is. Um, I was actually lucky enough to pay that arm and a leg this year to visit a friend who lives in Vancouver. So I have it, in my fresh memory, like what it's like to be in jet lag. And ironically, the first day is like very easy for me. I'm always like, "Ooh, this is so, I'm not tired at all, and I don't even need caffeine." But then the second and third day, oh my God, I could sleep. I want to sleep those and not be awake. But I have to because otherwise I will just go to my previous rhythm. So, um, have you been to any electronics related event lately or like before
I have
pandemic?
I
Okay.
have not. So and I do want to preface this. I'm not a big crowd person. I believe I have social anxiety. I think that's the driving thing of it. But up until like this year or last year, I didn't feel like I belonged at Maker Faire. I felt like I didn't have enough to contribute. I didn't have enough to show off. I felt like everyone there was like really good and really skilled, and I was not. And I realized in the last year or two that the Maker Faire folks, crowd, makers in general, are very inclusive. And it was me that was judging myself too harshly. So
Yeah.
in the near future, I would like to attend some conferences. So let's just put it out like that.
Okay. Yeah. There are so many things there. I want to say also that I have social anxiety too. Um, and you don't like have to open that more, but I want to open mine. So I actually like I don't like to be touched. I can do a handshake, uh, but that's about it. And this is actually something that I realized during the pandemic that oh my God, when people are not touching me accidentally or with my permission, it just gives me so much energy. And now when sort of like at least here in Finland we do have more like in-person events, not big events, but like anyway, we can see people now with or without masks. Um, I I now if I'm meeting a person like a new person in person, I tend to say like I'm not a hugger and I don't want to shake hands even. Um, so like now that I'm hoping to go to electronics, maker fairs or conferences in Europe or in North America this year or in the future, I'm anxious about that aspect. But otherwise, I would love to meet people because I feel like those spaces are very interesting and very inspiring, and people might be wearing, something that they made or have the projects there with them. So if it's maybe a companion robot that they made, it would be very cool to see those sitting on top of their hats or on their shoulders or maybe following them around on the floor. Um, so I so want to go to an event, and if sort of like fingers crossed, everything does go well, I will be participating the Open Hardware Summit next year. Um, have you heard of Open Hardware Summit?
Only through you.
Okay,
So
yeah.
yeah, not I'm not very outgoing, as you can see.
Well, I mean, I would assume like you're a podcast host. I was sort of looking up to you like, ooh, like a podcast host definitely is sort of like in the community. Like I feel like you're an integral part of this community because you're like the nexus. You're bringing people together. Um, so yeah, but Open Hardware Summit is like is a conference about open hardware, and open hardware can be anything from electronics to 3D printing, to even yarny things. And this event is hosted by the Open Hardware Association, um, and I think it's an American association, and then they want to promote um, openness, like people or companies publishing um, whatever it is, like schematics, files, instructions like how to make this thing that they either made or are selling. Um, and I think like Thea Flowers, she was a guest on a previous episode, like talked talked a little bit about open hardware already. So, and if you happen to know like the Open Hardware Association or the summit already, then you know what it is about. But this was a relatively new thing to me, so I found about this summit and about the association about over a year ago. And this was because I saw a friend of mine uh, retweeting um, one of their tweets, which was saying like, "Hey, we're arranging the annual summit in April um, 2022, and we have a diversity scholarship system, and now the applications for that scholarship are open. So if you feel like um, you are somehow underrepresented um, in this community of open electronics, you know, show up, like send out an application and see sort of if you can get the scholarship, which is financial aid to get you physically to that event. And I did this on a whim. I was like, okay, let's see if I'm enough, and I uh, filled out the application on the very last day of the application period because I was, you know, just putting enough because I felt like I am not enough. But then I sent it, and then a couple of months later, they were like, "Congratulations, we chose you to be one of the 10 scholarship recipients." So I am very happy about that.
And where was it? You said it was remote, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that was the next part. I don't know how many years the scholarship system has been in place, but before pandemic, it has been, and they have always arranged the summit in person or live. But during the pandemic, for obvious reasons, they had to revert into a virtual event. And this year, they were trying to arrange it as an in-person event, but then in I think it was in January when they said like the numbers don't look good. Unfortunately, we have to convert this into a virtual event, and therefore it wasn't in person, and I didn't get to meet all the other wonderful makers that are in that community in person, but I did meet them online, and I think I think that it was actually better that way. You know, no jet lag and all the hassle of flying during the pandemic. Um, so yeah, it was really meaningful to me, even if it was just a virtual event, or however you rate these, like what is more cool or more uh, like yeah better for you, live or in well, oh live or in person, live or virtual, I mean, yeah.
Where
um
was it supposed to be held? Do you know? In
in New
2022
York, in
in
New
New York.
York.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've been there. New York was a interesting visit.
yeah. What is the most interesting part of New York to you?
So the most interesting part is that the stereotype of New Yorkers is they're very rude and they're very self-centered. But it was
Mm,
the total opposite. Everyone there was super nice, super kind, smiling faces, stuff like that. So that subverted expectations for sure.
yeah.
And the other thing is how you can land at LaGuardia Airport, which is I think it's LaGuardia. Anyways, it's the one that's out. I think it's in Queens. It's a little bit. It's not in basically in the heart of downtown. It's the one
Mm,
off to the side, and you can hop into a subway car from there, and then you can get out in the heart of downtown. So you come from a place where it's kind of like 1 and 2 story houses, very neighborhoody grid like streets, and then you emerge from the subway and you can barely see the sky because all of the buildings are so tall that when you look up, they sort of converge on each other through
Yeah.
your vision. So it's a big difference from one end to the other of the subway. So that was the most unexpected things.
Yeah. Do you have skyscrapers where you live?
We do. We Ottawa is well known as the Canadian city where fun goes to die. So
Oh
there's
no.
nothing like remarkable about Ottawa, but the one big problem with skyscrapers in Ottawa is that our government building, our Parliament building, is on top of a hill, and it has a clock tower which is, I don't know, about 10, 15 stories tall. And there is a law that's been in the books since the Parliament was built that no building downtown can be taller than the Peace Tower, the clock tower of the Parliament.
Uh,
So yeah, we have low rise buildings. We don't have high rise buildings. So
okay.
it's very flat.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel good there because like in the Helsinki area where I live, I think that the highest building that we have here is it's definitely, below 50. There might be some building that goes over 20, but no. So like I was also mouth open and sort of my neck um oh like so much pain in my neck afterwards when I was trying to, see the top of the skyscrapers in New York. So I was also like, woo, what are these buildings?
So what was
And
your biggest surprise in New York then?
okay, I visited New York in January 2019 for a knitting related event. Um, and yes, there are many knitting related events in the world and also here in Finland. And since I am a hardcore knitter, I travel. I travel to those. Um, my like the most interesting point and a very like this was the lesson that I needed to learn. Um, and a bit of a I'm gonna say a trigger warning to some of the listeners. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about systemic racism here. So if sort of like you have had a bad day related to this topic, like maybe come back after a couple of minutes and then it's maybe safe to listen again without being triggered. Was the fact that all of the the movies, the TV series that I had seen that had been filmed or made in New York or made to look like they were made in New York were very white. And subconsciously, that was the impression that I was also expecting. And then when I the reality hits, and I'm like, this Hollywood productions have been lying to me. Like this is what normal people look like. I was so shocked. Like why? Like why did this have to be done? And you know, yeah. So that was a really important lesson to me. Like Finland, Finland still is very white. I would say that the Helsinki area is more diverse. But no matter how much the sort of like our marketing or image, like a PR image, is of the model society where equality has been reached, that is not the truth. So we still have sexism and racism and also ableism very much here. And because we like I grew up here, that's also in my thinking. So that was a good lesson and a fact that I will like remember always from that New York visit.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'm desensitized by how white the Hollywood filmmakers make their movies because
Mm,
I grew up in a very lower class neighborhood in Ottawa, which is, I mean, still privileged compared to some countries, obviously,
mm,
but um, I didn't grow up in a majority white neighborhood, so to me, the
Mm.
diversity in New York didn't surprise me at all. Actually, one thing is religious garb was on display. There were like Hasidic Jewish people in New York where
Ah,
you basically don't see them in Canada. I don't know if they're not here or if they don't wear that kind of clothing in public, but it was very prominent in New York, and it's not at all here in Ottawa. So that kind of surprised me a little bit, but the diversity, not at all.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Look,
Okay.
we're running a little bit low on
Yeah,
time, and I do know you want to shout out one last thing, but before we do that, can I ask you the question I ask all of my guests?
absolutely. I've been waiting for this question. Go ahead.
Excellent. So you get unlimited funding to start the business of your dreams. It doesn't have to be profitable because you are funded, but it does have to provide a service or a product. What kind of business do you start?
Okay. Um, I want to tackle the profitability first. Um, um, I'm also fine if like it doesn't if it doesn't make profit, but I would like to have it sort of like break even. Um, but to the point, I would set up an electronics related school to girls and then non-binary youth here in Helsinki. And it wouldn't be, it would be a sort of like afternoon type of hobby club more, but I would like to call it a school because the idea is that people, of um, majority of the classes would be to kids who are in primary school, but there would be also to classes to teenagers, and then we adults could buy like a um, makerspace kind of subscription, or maybe like even one time or like weekend tickets to come and use the workshop when the workshop or the space is not used to teach kids. Um, and yeah, there would be classes like pottery and electronics or hobby horses and electronics. Also, another thing that I would love to participate would be like, hang on, let's see if I can parse this together. So, elec electronics, hang on, bombing? No, it doesn't. So now I'm referring to yarn bombing, and now
And
in this political
yeah, you're gonna
situation
get
that
me
is, yeah,
demonetized.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, like,
So like
yarn,
let's try mobbing because like
yeah,
sort of like that, right? I think I know what you're getting at. Something
yeah.
that's like, you do a lot of in a very quick succession type thing.
No, actually, so
Oh,
yarn
okay.
bombing is something that means that whatever the technique, like is it knitting or crochet, is that you if you, for example, yarn bomb a tree, it means that you would sort of knit or crochet around that tree, and then it sort of like makes
Oh,
something like
I get it. Some people
yeah,
did that to our statues here. They made it was actually there was a project. They People knitted scarves and toques
yeah.
and put them all over our statues downtown with a note that if you were cold and you needed it, you could take it for
Oh,
free.
yes, that is one way. The ones that I see here in Finland are more like you cannot take them off the tree or off the occasional statue. Um, but what would be the sort of like electronics version of this is that um, hide a small windmill or like a solar panel somewhere that you cannot see, but then like put a USB um, you know um,
Like a
outlet
power
somewhere where you
like a
could
power
then
bank?
down. Come again?
Like a power bank or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And we actually have one really cool piece of art in Helsinki that is made like so. It has like I think it has both solar panels and then not a windmill but a water mill, and there is like a normal USB uh what is it? Oh my God, jack output like that you
Yeah.
can, yeah, yeah. So something like this, but the Finnish climate is harsh and cold, and we have snow and ice in the winter. So I would be really interested in making something that lasts at least one winter out there. But the point is like a school with that very sort of diverse and even weird or wild classes, mix something other type of other maker technique with electronics and let the kids make whatever they feel like. So that would be my business.
I mean, that's a great business. I feel like anything that sort of encourages people to discover things or teaches people new skills, I think those are the things that personally I think the government should be investing in, because if someone gets inspired to make something great, we all benefit from it. So I always think we should be fostering curiosity and teaching new skills. And so that's a really good thing for you to want to do. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
thank you. Um, so I so wish that at some point this will be a reality and not just a an answer or a pipe dream. Um, but yeah, this is my answer to your question. And by the way, I love this question. It's always, I think it tells something about that person or your guest when you ask this of them. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And you also, because we need to go soon, you wanted to plug one of Aisha's projects, right?
Yeah, so to those of you who celebrate Christmas, um, now it's December, but Dan, you said that this episode will come out in the end of December.
Yeah, like the
So
20th or something.
yeah, around that date. So when this comes out, it will be somewhat late to participate in most of these challenges. But my friend Ayesha, who was a guest a couple of episodes ago, has started an advent of circuits, and this is a challenge or an advent calendar that is on Instagram. And how it works is that Ayesha posts like a daily prompt or a daily challenge that is somehow related to circuits that you can, you know, do by yourself. So it's nothing. It's not a competition or like um, that kind of advent calendar. But something, if you have components lying around at home that you haven't used for a while, or you're just maybe in the mood of reading on something new and learning something new, that's also one way to do it. So if I give you an example, one of her like prompts or doors or challenges so far has been like do something new with LEDs, for example. So it's very vague and open, and you can decide based on your time, energy, and skill level, like what do you want to do. And I have been a really bad friend. I have not had time yet to do any of the challenges, but I do want to, because when I see other people making, I'm like, oh, I don't have to start a project from scratch. That's also like another demand that I noticed that I was setting myself, like, oh, then I would have to start from zero. But no, I don't. I can use some existing project or even just components, like put them together with alligator clips, and that's it. Um, so if there is a need in your life for something like this, something immaterial, a nice advent calendar related to electronics, I think this is a really great thing, and I'm so happy that Aisha is making it. So yeah, join in
And
the fun.
And if you're listening to this way too late to participate as we go, I would still encourage you to take a look at the prompts, because it's a good way to challenge yourself and challenge your skills. And you're never really learning to your maximum potential until you take on challenges. It forces you to sort of look at things in a different way. So I would encourage you to take a look at the prompts and try to complete the challenges, because I know for programming, one of my plans is there's a subreddit called Daily Programmer, where someone will post every day a prompt, and you have to solve the problem using coding. And so um, those kinds of things is how I plan to teach myself to code. And these kinds of things is, I think, is a good idea for learning electronics as well. So there's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I did not know that there's a daily programmer subreddit. I mean, to be also honest, I'm not on Reddit. I mean, I know what it is, but I'm not in there. So I'm just happy that there's like, around the year something like this that you can do if you want to. So I think that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, where do we point people? Where do people go and look at your lovely stuff and interact with you and etc.?
Okay. Um, I'm gonna point out you to three different social media platforms. The most active one is Instagram. And my handle there is knit underscore two underscore under. Oh my God. Let's retake this. So my Instagram handle is knit underscore two underscore code. And the two is like TO and not a number. Um, and yeah, I post regularly, irregularly on Instagram. Um, and I'm in the process of leaving Twitter. So I have a Twitter handle that is the same one as in Instagram, but as Twitter as um, I don't know, spreading havoc by the minute. Um, it's not a good place for makers or women makers anymore. So if you're listening to this a year from now, I might not be on Twitter anymore, but maybe somewhere else. I want to see sort of like where do people go to. So I know that many have moved to Mastodon, for example, but I'm not there yet. And then a third channel or media is actually YouTube. So I started that YouTube channel several years ago, and I haven't posted. But my plan is to start posting recently, now that I have a good space where to record video material. And my handle at YouTube is knit underscore two underscore code underscore podcast. And I post on YouTube in the format of like knitting and programming related like video podcast. So to somebody who has or follows knitters on YouTube, like that is the format that I use. It's either 30 or 60-minute episodes talking about what I'm making or planning to make. But yeah, I'm gonna start posting, maybe not this year, but next year at the latest in there. So that is how you can follow me or reach me if you want to. Thank you.
Awesome. And I really hope that at least you'll go to Senya's. Dang, I said your name properly this whole podcast, and I
Yes,
just
you
butchered
did.
it on
I'm
the
proud of you.
last attempt. Okay.
I forgive
Um,
you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I would appreciate if everyone would go to Senya's Instagram and at least take a look at the knitting projects and the umbrella. Um, and it's really cool stuff. It's worth seeing. It's worth taking a couple minutes and take a look. You'll be blown away, I'm sure. I know I was, and I'm not even just saying that to be nice. And so go check her out and leave a comment, something positive, please. If you leave something negative, then just leave it on my page instead. Um,
Thank
so
you.
go say something nice to Senya wherever you can find her. But you know what? Thanks so much for taking your time and coming on the podcast. It's truly my honor to have people like you on the podcast. So I'm really glad you were able to make it today.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm so happy that like people like you host a podcast. So I hope that you, like I said before, continue making this at least three, why not 30 years from now. So thank you so much.
No problem. And if you're a maker, and I have a very broad definition of maker, and you want to be on the podcast, reach out. Senya did, and look where she is. And she also put me in contact with Ayesha, like she said. So um, yeah, small acts like that make a big difference in the long run. So thanks for listening, everyone, and I hope to catch you on the next one.